6:05. I think we'll get started here. I expect some more folks to trickle in, but as a reminder, we are recording this meeting just for the benefit of people who are not able to join us tonight, can view this content later. So good evening. Thanks for joining us, everybody. My name is David Davies. I'm the outreach coordinator that covers the Minneapolis segment of the Metro Green Line Extension project. With me is Project Director Jim Alexander, and he's waving there. And we are here tonight to discuss the upcoming closure of the Cedar Lake Parkway for the construction of the Kenilworth LRT tunnel. We have a presentation to run through, and we'll have time for some question and answer. So bear with me as we a couple transitions here in a little bit. We have a video to show you that kind of gives a little bit of background on the construction of the tunnel, since some people have followed that closely, some have not, as well as the closure itself, upcoming closure itself. We understand there's a lot of attention paid whenever we are closing a road or doing something else in this area that limits mobility, and certainly we want to be responsive to that and provide people with the information as best we can in advance of the closure, give people an idea of what's upcoming so they can plan for that to the best of their ability. I'm going to start off with our presentation here, but before we get started, I can't see all of the participants here as I'm sharing my screen, but I know that Chair Charlie Zelli was going to join us tonight to just listen in. I know he's very invested in the project and wanting to be aware of all of the concerns that the community has. Certainly as a local, he lives this project as well. And just wanted to acknowledge that he's on the line listening. And we might be joined by I'm kind of scrolling through here. I'm not seeing, I see Commissioner Green just acknowledging some electeds. Commissioner Green as well. I see Pat Sadler from Councilmember Goodman's office. I'm sorry if I'm missing some folks, but just wanted to acknowledge. I know that a lot of folks are interested in this issue and giving it the due attention that it deserves. We'll get started here, and let's see. As always, you'll see me kind of toggling between my screens here as I'm talking. But as always, we always start out with an overview, just a brief overview. Some people are still joining us with some understanding of the project, but not a lot. But remember that the Metro Green Line Extension, of course, it's always been called the Southwest Light Rail Project, is 14.5 miles, 16 stations. And of course, it is an extension of the Green Line that currently runs between downtown Minneapolis and downtown St. Paul. So when this line opens, we're getting a one-seat ride to downtown St. Paul, to Union Depot there. And of course, you are able to transfer in downtown Minneapolis to ride the Blue Line down to the Mall of America and the airport and the VA and other important community resources. Wanted to jump right into just getting a little better understanding, a brief grounding of the Kenilworth LRT tunnel and its construction. The tunnel is, as a lot of people are aware, especially those who live adjacent to the tunnel, it's constructed using a cut and cover method. So essentially what we're doing is we're excavating a big trench and then building the tunnel inside that trench and covering it back up. The tunnel is almost 2,800 feet long, and you will see in our construction update, and you'll see in our meeting tonight, that we like to talk about, we refer to the tunnel divided up into segments or cells. Those cells, there are about 30 cells, and they're generally about 100 feet in length. You'll see that when we refer to where construction activities are in the tunnel segments, which segment is being excavated, which segments are being, concrete or poured in them. So it's just a good reminder that there are 30 cells that comprise the tunnel. They're about 100 feet in length, give or take. Clearly, it's not 3,000 feet long, but there's some wiggle room there at the ends there. And you'll notice as we go forward that we have lots of different work activities going on at any given time in these cells as we're progressing. So, for instance, when we're moving through the parkway, as you'll see, we have a work area that's about 700 feet long, where different activities, it's almost like an assembly line, are one activity is happening in one cell, different activities are happening in the next cell. So it's quite a challenging and complex process to progress construction of the tunnel. At this point, we're going to jump right into a video, and you'll excuse me as I do a transition here. I'm going to stop sharing that PowerPoint, and then I'm going to switch to a video that we have on our YouTube, and this will also, a link will be shared on the website. You won't be able to have to go into the presentation or into the meeting to view this video. Jim, can you give me a thumbs up if you see, are you seeing the video? All right. Just gonna make sure it's sound on, and away we go.
The Kenilworth LRT Tunnel is a 2,870-foot structure that stretches from just east of West Lake Street to just south of the Cedar Lake Channel. Once constructed, the tunnel will run under Cedar Lake Parkway as well as the Kenilworth Trail. In order to advance the tunnel, Cedar Lake Parkway needs to be closed for an extended duration. Initially, it was anticipated tunnel construction could be accomplished in about 180 days. Now that construction of the tunnel has commenced, the contractor faces several challenges that will extend the duration of the Cedar Lake Parkway closure. Site access constraints, the length of the work area, and the specific order of construction operations all contribute to a longer duration for construction of the tunnel. It is now estimated that the parkway will be closed in early February and reopen around Thanksgiving. The tunnel is being constructed using a cut and cover method, where a trench is first excavated to construct the tunnel, and after the tunnel is constructed, it is then covered up. The tunnel is divided up into 30 segments or cells that are generally 100 feet in length. There are different construction activities going at any one time in 7 consecutive cells, creating a work area over 700 feet long. During the excavation phase, soil is removed from 3 different cells simultaneously, and the contractor installs a series of supports called struts and wailers to provide additional support to build the tunnel. Strut placement slows excavation because materials and equipment have to move around them. Due to tight site access, excavation progresses in a specific linear way to remove and transport soil to other parts of the corridor. The excavation extends about 15 to 20 feet below the water table, further slowing the process as it is more difficult to scoop and place saturated soils. Additionally, divers must check the sheet piles for gaps and make repairs as necessary. This all occurs in a work site that is only about 50 feet wide. Construction of the tunnel involves pouring concrete in 6 different phases, each needing time to cure before the next phase of work can start. Once excavation is completed in a cell, a concrete tremi-seal ranging from 4 to 10 feet in thickness is poured underwater to create an anchor for the tunnel structure and seals off the excavation from groundwater so the tunnel can be constructed in dry conditions. After the water is removed from the cell, the sheet piles are sprayed with concrete to create a uniform surface. A layer of concrete is poured on top of the rough tremi surface to create a level surface for tunnel construction. The struts and wailers are removed and a concrete slab is poured to create the tunnel floor, which will serve as the final surface for the track bed and rails. The tunnel walls and ceiling are poured in one concrete pour in about 30-foot long segments. A final topping layer of concrete is then poured. The finished tunnel includes a waterproof membrane to prevent water from entering the finished tunnel and steel rebar to make it structurally sound. The access constraints limit the opportunity to work simultaneously in multiple cells. There is generally only one concrete pour that can take place on a day. This is more challenging because of the inability to access the tunnel site from the west end of the corridor due to the construction of the secant pile wall adjacent to the Cedar Isle condos. As the work progresses across the parkway, about one cell is completed per month. For the duration of the closure of Cedar Lake Parkway, access across the corridor will be maintained for trail users. Access will be phased to accommodate the progress of the tunnel, as well as the placement of a sanitary sewer force main that crosses the corridor between Depot Street and 28th Avenue. Once the tunnel structure located within the Cedar Lake Parkway closure area is complete, Cedar Lake Parkway will reopen. Changes will be communicated through the project website at greenlineext.org. We understand this closure will significantly impact the surrounding community. The project and contractor have analyzed alternatives for this work, and this option balances the duration of the work with impacts to the community. Project staff remain committed to providing frequent updates to the community regarding this work. For the most up-to-date project information, please visit greenlineext.org.
All right. While I'm getting the PowerPoint back up, I'm pausing right now. I'm actually going to leave the PowerPoint off for a second so I can have a little better mobility here with my chat, and just want to pause for any questions or thoughts that people have before we really get into the closure itself. You know, that's part of this was the grounding of what it means to build this tunnel. We've certainly started and progressed a certain amount in this process, but now we're kind of moving into a phase where as it impacts Cedar Lake Parkway, we want people to be very aware of exactly what's happening as we're progressing with this work. Are there any questions that people have at this time? And certainly we'll have time for Q&A at the end, but just wanted to free it up in case anyone has questions about the tunnel construction itself. You should be able to unmute, and if you, you're also able to raise your hand if you want, using the little raise hand function on your in the participant list. Yep, our coworker Andy demonstrated that just now. If there's anyone on the phone that wants to chime in, now would be a good time, since I'm not seeing anyone chiming in on video. Alrighty. Sounds like we can move on. And of course, if people have other questions, please feel free. We can come back to that as needed. All right, so I'm gonna we actually have those in there for just reference purposes, but I want to skip ahead to the actual closure and turn it over to Jim Alexander, who's going to go through some of the details of the closure.
All right, David, thank you. Jim Alexander, project director. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Right, good. Well, so we have closed the parkway already 3 times, and I think we closed up to about 26 days. And I think many of you are aware that we had initially anticipated 180 days for this closure. That was during design. We did not have the benefit of the contractor's input for that because that was done before we went out for bid. And now we're faced with the reality. As you see, there's a lot of construction needs to be done. It's a very lengthy process. We have quite a bit of the tunnel open at any one time, doing different types of activity. And so we are looking just under 300 days for the closure. I'll say that that's a conservative number. We want to beat that. But we wanted to be upfront to acknowledge this is going to take certainly longer than 180 days. And so we are looking to begin this closure in early February. That final date's actually being determined. We're thinking the week of the 7th. But we would look to get things back up on the parkway for vehicle access, and just before Thanksgiving, probably a little earlier than that, because we'll have to make the time frame to do asphalt paving. Next slide, David.
Yep.
So the video talked a little bit about this, and we're certainly open for questions, but you know, we are limited on access, and coupled with the challenges we had with getting the sheet piling in, many of you are probably aware that we had some gaps in the sheets. We had to do some grouting to seal up those gaps, but we still have a process where we have to go anytime we're underwater. We have a diver getting involved and looking at the seams of these sheet piles to make sure that there are no gaps between the sheets, because there were some splitting occurred as we were pushing the sheets in, and we don't see that until the excavation starts. So that's a key piece that we have to stop every 3 feet of excavation to do that. And just getting back to the access, as the video talked, there's really different work going on in each one of these cells. We have about seven cells open at any one time where we're building the tunnel, and we're also excavating the other end. And just to progress through the parkway, all that activity needs to get started with the excavation. We need to pour all the concrete down below the tunnel, pour the concrete for the tunnel, and then ultimately backfill it. The secant wall has also challenged us with limiting our access. The contractor was intending to access the construction from both ends to have this done in probably a more speedily fashion, but with the secant wall, they're limited in going one direction here with the work because of the secant. There's really no room to bring equipment around the drill rigs that we have currently at the Sika condominium and parking garage. So next slide, David. So this is just kind of a first configuration is showing the parkway closure. I did want to emphasize that we have committed, and we still are committed to provide ped and pedestrian access across the construction area. That will change as we go through different phases, and we'll show that in a subsequent slide, but we will maintain that during construction. Next slide, please. So this is kind of just, if you will, just kind of imagine those different cells that are under construction that were shown, the different pieces shown in the video, where we essentially have all those cells 1 through 7 open at one time, where there's excavation on the east end or on the right side, and the tunnel is getting completed on the left side. The line work in blue is a force main that we've had to relocate. That'll eventually be located on top of the tunnel. And so that work needs to be completed as we progress through this area. And I think these next slides just kind of show the progression of how that would look. The tunnel construction doesn't stop at 8. We just, for graphical purposes, we just kind of truncated it there. But the tunnel does progress just short of, or just west or south of the channel. But for here, just for depiction, we're showing it coming through the parkway. As you can see, we'll eventually progress with that construction, and we'll eventually restore the parkway come the fall time, and then we'll be reopening for traffic with the force main back in place as intended. Next slide, I think, shows the pedestrian. Oh, okay, so here's the pedestrian bicycle detour. We're going to stage that just to accommodate the different construction activities. And we're going to work with the city and the park board. We've already started working on some details on what that's going to look like in terms of the access, and we'll be communicating through our normal means, Gov Delivery, to announce any shifts that will occur. Currently we're thinking of 3 phases, and we'll show that in the subsequent slide. Automobile detours, we have essentially what we had in the past. We have variable messaging signs that we'll have in place, and a lot of information on our website to alert motorists about the upcoming detour. Burnham Road will be temporarily converting that into 2-way traffic up on the bridge between the boulevard and Sheridan Avenue South, and likewise a little segment on the Lake of the Isles Parkway will be converting that temporarily to 2-way traffic between Dean Parkway and West 24th, and then there will be continued access at the alleyway at Xerxes Avenue and also up to Benton Boulevard. So I think the next slide shows the configuration of what those access points will be. So initially, you can see kind of in orange, a little hard to see on the image here, but we'll have the same detour as we have today. So it's really not a detour; it's just the route on the north side of Cedar Lake Parkway, and then eventually we'll transition into the phase 2, the line work in blue, where it'll come from 28th, and we'll be able to make our way over to Sunset and over to Cedar Lake Parkway where the trail is. And then phase 3 will be in the yellow, where we're going to have to move it just off the parkway and then bring us back to the Cedar Lake Parkway. So this is automobile detours. Again, this is the similar detour route that we had in place before. And we look to get messaging signs up ahead of time before the closure begins. And essentially just the routing in blue and orange there you see. And I think we have another image I think it's more of I guess that's it. Here it is. So again, the closure, we're going to use the same automobile detours we've had in the past for the closure, and we will maintain that bike and pedestrian access across the parkway or across the construction area. So David, I think that's the conclusion of the slides. Be open for any questions.
Thanks, Jim. We've had a few in the chat, and I think we're kind of talked a little bit about some of them, but I'll just read them off and kind of tick them off as we go. So one question just checking in, saying being able to go from Cedar Lake Parkway to Burnham Road, and that is correct. You will be able to still make that. Burnham Road will be fully open as it has normally been in the past during those closures. There was one closure where we were actually working in Burnham Road, so there were impacts there, which people probably remember as kind of part of the work in that area. But for this closure, Burnham Road certainly is going to be open, and you will be able to move between cars will be able to access that from Cedar Lake Parkway in and out. And then kind of related to that, will Burnham Road be 2-wayed? And that is correct. Jumping down to a comment there that maybe it goes the Lake of the Isles goes to Sheridan, not 24th. That's probably correct. I think I looked at the map there and saw 24th and probably didn't extend it far enough. So that is correct. And then one comment, Jim, we've got one bike and pedestrian access at Cedar Lake Parkway and Burnham Road being maintained. The intersection must be striped and stop signs made larger on the bike paths. It's incredibly dangerous without the increase in traffic. So I know, Jim, you as a biker, you've probably ridden that route a lot. That crossing that trail, with a lot of extra traffic, we can certainly, we're in the midst of finalizing that MOT, right?
Yeah, we can actually pass through there every day coming into work, and we could certainly look at the stop signs. I know what you mean. They are kind of small. We could look at enlarging those. The striping, I'd like to, maybe we could circle back with the city on that. I'll just advise that being winter is typically difficult to put any striping down with the winter conditions, but something we'll talk with city staff about that piece.
That's good. Yep, and some agreement there. We've got I got a question that's a little bit off topic from the Cedar Lake Parkway closure, but I just wanted to open up at this point in time to any other questions that people have about the closure. And if you want to raise your hand or enter in chat or just unmute yourself. Oh, we've got one. Did you say, Jim, did you say the closure has been extended because the contractor hasn't weighed in when the schedule was set? Why was the schedule set without consulting them?
Well, I'll start with the duration was set back during design, and we had to get that into the bid documents to set some kind of a basis of what the contractor is going to be bidding. Now, we've had a lot of challenges with the tunnel and with the unforeseen conditions with the boulders and the difficulty getting the sheets in, and just the challenges with excavation because of the conditions that are actually realized that the contractor needs more time. And we didn't have that luxury of consulting with the contractor at the time. This is a design bid build process where the contractor isn't involved during the design piece. And so they weren't really at the table to talk through any durations on that.
The second part to that, Jim, is can we expect other changes due to them not being consulted? But I think that just speaks to certainly the complex nature of the project, right?
Right. Well, this tunnel, as I'll admit, it's a big thing to tackle, and we've learned a lot. So far we have 7 or 8 cells excavated, and there's still a long ways to go. We still could have some surprises. We hope we don't have those, but we continue to work closely with the contractor as the contractor proceeds on the tunnel excavation.
Got one there about Burnham Road, and I just put up the detour map again, and it says, is the two-way on Burnham only for local traffic? And Jim, I think we've talked in the past about this closure being, it is certainly we have it identified as a route and being but it is identified as a local access only route that's how that route is envisioned, and it's why we have the wayfinding and signs out in other places to try to redirect pass through traffic that is not local. Correct?
That is correct, David.
Yeah. So folks, you can see just, and it might be, we've used this map, similar map before, and it'll be on the website as we come up on the closure. We want to try to keep the local traffic to the local streets and the folks who are trying to go through there to reach other destinations on some of the bigger roads. So you'll see some of the what's labeled as a regional traffic detour in blue. We're trying to keep folks on those bigger roads and direct them as such with signage, so that they're not coming into down the Parkway or on Burnham Road or on Lake of the Isles, that kind. Let's see. I'm back up here to some. I'm just going to say right now, folks, we are here to talk about the closure of Cedar Lake Parkway. Questions about schedule and cost, Jim. I know we're planning a meeting in March, a set of town halls to discuss kind of the general state of the Green Line Extension project and upcoming work and kind of a state of things at that time. So I thought that it's probably best suited that we kind of leave some of those questions like for secant walls and schedule and cost for those meetings. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, I could answer the secant. I think there was
Sure.
a question I thought I saw
Sure.
about the secant wall. The reason why we went to a secant wall at the Sika properties is because the sheet piles, as we were installing those, we observed some settlement at the ground surface, and we did not want to risk having any settlement at the buildings, the condominium building and the parking garage in particular. And so we went to this alternative method that is much more is better use for avoiding that settlement, but it is more costly. And we have initiated a change order with the contractor with that, and then of course they're underway with that work now. In terms of the cost and schedule, I saw some questions in here about the overall. We're still working on the details on that. We hope to come out soon with some updates on the overall cost to the civil construction and also the timing, but we're not prepared to do that tonight. David, I also saw some questions in here about. I saw something about the alleyway.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I was going there next.
Okay.
No, go for it. If you that's a good point to tackle about the kind of the use of the alley with the detour.
Yeah, that's just that alleyway, just to the just to the east of the corridor. So that's still going to remain open as it is today. We're not necessarily closing that.
Yep. And the entrance by the off Cedar Lake RWR, the entrance by the RWR off Cedar Lake Parkway still be accessible. I believe. I mean, I think the point is we're keeping other than the road, the closure of the road itself, the access to all of the properties around this area is still going to remain. I think that's kind of
RWR meant. I didn't understand that acronym.
I mean, Xerxes is a one-way. I know the alley is, there, and then Xerxes itself is a one-way. We're not, but we're gonna keep that access as it is, from my understanding. Right. Backing up there, we had a question about pedestrians and bikers crossing Cedar Lake Parkway, and I'll back up to the phasing of. Here, I know again it's kind of a little bit hard to read maybe on screens, but so note, folks, that we've got three projected or anticipated phases for the pedestrian and bike detours. The first one is what's going to be in place when the parkway closes at first, and then for this question about coming down Depot, that would be phase 2. So kind of the middle phase of the work. We would anticipate putting peds and bikes down Depot and across the tracks safely, of course, to connect up to 28th Street West, which will be able to take people over to meet up with Dean Parkway. How close to the Cedar Lake shores? I know that the fence that's there today is pretty much on the construction easement line. So we are keeping, from my understanding, we would keep that work on our side of the fence. Right, Jim? I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it would mean repositioning how that area looks today, because certainly that's already a pretty tight space with some of the equipment that's there. Going back to the chat here. Talking about noise and vibration from excavation, Jim. So, we're coming up on the parkway. We've got some multifamily housing that we're rolling by right now, and single family housing. As we get across the parkway, certainly folks are interested. They have not really, they saw the sheeting installation process continue last year, and now we're going to be coming in with excavation and construction. So talking about noise and vibration, what can people expect in that area as we move north and east?
Yeah, I think probably the major thing is the trucks backing up. There's going to be, as they beep, that's a safety requirement. So there'll be some of that. When we're currently using Cedar Lake Parkway as kind of a turnaround place so they can back up into the excavation. But as we progress to the north of the parkway, they're going to have find another place to turn around and then back up. And so that's going to be probably the primary noise element. In terms of vibration, we haven't really seen anything that's really over thresholds. I know maybe some of it's disruptive out there, but I wouldn't see anything as really out of the ordinary for a major construction site. That being said, there is going to be a lot of activity going on with noise of digging. There's a excavator that digs material, digs soil. There's also what's called a teledipper. It reaches down into the trench to grab out soil. But it's probably mostly the trucks, I think, and the concrete trucks as well, because we have a lot of concrete trucks coming in, and you have to build the tunnel with the concrete there. Andy,
Jim,
I don't know if you have anything to add specifically to that.
Jim, I think the only other thing that we've heard from residents is that the hydrovac has been a little bit noisy at times when we're dealing with water and sort of the sludge after the tremie pour, as we're cleaning up and getting ready to progress work up from there. We've heard that from some residents as something that's been a little bit noisy, so we're working with the JV on that one as well.
Right, so that's a big vacuum cleaner that's used to clean off the excess concrete. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, and Jim, I'll add I think the vacuum truck is just one example of the equipment and machinery that you don't necessarily always see in the images that we show, right? We show the big equipment, the cranes, the excavators, and then there are things like the vacuum trucks that are kind of cleanup or maintenance, pumping, generators, things like that, which we try to use as things that are as quiet as possible, but still do sometimes result in some noise that wasn't there before. And certainly that's what I hear when I'm talking to residents who are, adjacent to the excavation areas. These are the things that kind of travel with the work as it progresses. Let's see. Headed down here, other projects being worked on simultaneously in the area. We certainly are very aware of some of these, both in the past, county projects that have been worked on, and of course private development that's being worked on. We had the park board project and some associated work up at Burnham last year. So we certainly do coordinate. The question is about coordination. We certainly do coordinate with counterparts at the city of Minneapolis, specifically the Public Works Department and Hennepin County. Those are two primary, but we coordinate with our own Metro Transit operations and other entities as well with the park board. And of course, as we're on the border of St. Louis Park with entities like Three Rivers Park District, to make sure that we're all aware of the work that's being done in this area. Specifically as it relates to whenever there's a big road closure like this, how that might affect traffic going by other developments. Yeah. Jim, next question, an interesting one that's kind of come up in the past. If you worked nights and weekends, would you be able to shorten the closure? Teams are already on site in the area about 6:30 to 6:30, which official work hours start at 7. Sometimes they're arriving and getting their coffee and work prep, less, noiseless, or not starting equipment, but having meetings before that 7 a.m. and then firing up engines at 7. And then 6 p.m. is the work hours ending point. Sometimes we have some extended hours for things like the tremie pour. But in terms of nights and weekends, would we be able to shorten the closure?
Well, interesting question. Is something we've batted around quite a bit. I know there's a lot of sensitivities to working overtime, and we've had requests out from time time and time here again for various activities. But if we did have more work hours, we would certainly get things done sooner. I think it's just a matter of is there an acceptance to do that? Because you've got one neighbor will say, yeah, great, I don't care, go ahead and work on Saturday and Sunday even. We've got another neighbor who says, no way. We would certainly entertain working Saturdays, for example. I think that would definitely reduce the time that it takes to get through the parkway as well as finishing the tunnel up. Working nights, right now with the colder weather, maybe not so much of a benefit, but as we get in lighter, get more light during the day, that certainly would be a benefit to get the work done. But something we could pick up discussions with the city. But so far we have just said working Monday through Friday, and except for those special occasions where we have needed to do some work for the railroad, for example, where we can't get an outage during the weekday. But we're certainly open to working extended hours.
David, Jim, it's Laura. I posed a question, and the reason I asked it is because I know we've talked about it in the Sidno level and other community spaces, but I don't think we had the information that the alternative was a 10-month closure when that was being discussed. And so now that we have that time frame, I think it's worth revisiting what people's appetite is. And other people have different needs and different expectations for their summer hours, but it does seem if folks are already arriving early and they're kind of hanging out a little bit afterwards every night, maybe we could punch in a couple extra hours. So happy to take that offline. But
sure. Well, if I could offer, Laura, that maybe it's not everything, maybe, for example, the secant work continues, because I know that's can be fairly disruptive for the Seco folks and Cedar Shores on the other side of the railroad. Maybe that's only a Monday through Friday, and maybe excavation or concrete work is something we could look at. We're certainly open to looking at different scenarios.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Certainly a sensitive thing, but we want to look at all options. Kind of returning to ped safety, which I know that we are really thinking of when we think through these detours. Adding this is kind of a specific request, but I think we'll chalk it up to kind of how we look at ped safety in this area with these detours. Adding a flashing light ped crossing by the beach. I think there's a kind of in that, probably if you were to ballpark it, it's kind of right where we have our hash marks kind of coming down for phases 2 and 3. Just with the idea that there are a lot of cars kind of not only, coming down that area, but maybe attempting to turn around due to the closed road. So just something for consideration. Wanted to highlight that. Provide idea guidance on the timeline for opening the trail, Jim. So this is kind of gets to honestly to schedule and costs, but there is a little bit more to it of just like, is the trail tied specifically to tunnel construction timeline, or are there other factors that come into play when it comes to, say, and we're talking Kenilworth between Midtown and 21st?
Sure. Well, it is tied to the tunnel construction. So we need to get the tunnel done before we can do anything with the trail, because the trail sits on top of it for most of that stretch.
Right.
Certainly before we get up to by the time we get up to the channel. So that is something that we're working on in terms of the tunnel construction along with the bike trail. And also to speak personally, I'm looking forward to getting that open, because I'm a user of that, was a user of that trail when we had it open, and I know it's an item that's on a lot of people's minds.
Great. We've got a question after that about consulting with police and fire about access during the closure, relating an account of a paramedic taking a long time to get to a call. I know that Jim even in this last coordination meeting, with the city of Minneapolis, we brought this up following our meeting with the Sydenham, a monthly meeting with the Sydenham neighborhood. So certainly a priority for the community. Certainly something that we want to make sure that public safety is aware of in advance of the closure. Anything else to add there, Jim?
Well, yeah, we'll just continue to coordinate with City Public Works, who I know stays in touch with all the emergency response folks.
Yeah, and I know people say they try to minimize like staying in touch, but it really is, it's kind of how we are set up, and we have a lot of confidence and work well with the city to give them as specific of information as we can. And they are very good at routing that information to public safety. So we certainly, that's kind of the system we follow. Let's see. Edit down a little bit. Is there any way trucks can minimize backing up?
Well, that's an interesting topic.
We know it's terrible.
Yeah,
we know it's terrible.
We know it's terrible.
Yeah.
I actually brought this up with one of the leads with McCrossan, Tom McCrossan, and his response was his son was run over by a truck on a construction site that didn't have the backup, and so it's a personal level for him that this is just a requirement. We have to have this on our construction sites. It's something we can't deviate from. I know it's annoying. But we just really can't deviate from it because of the safety consideration.
And I know that's not just for folks in the Parkway area. I know that the folks up near Burnham live this every day too. Burnham and 21st, as there's a lot of movement every day around there, a lot of equipment maneuvering. So I understand that frustration. Kind of a logistical question. For Jim, maybe, I don't know if Andy wants to chime in here too. Will we complete the tunnel to the east end? So basically to the end of going in that direction before reopening the Parkway. And how are we planning to move the big gantry systems back and forth once the Parkway is reopened?
Yeah, sure, Jeremy. I'll take that one. This is Andy Collum, the car here for the east side. So I think you're asking, well, when I read that, I think you're asking complete the tunnel all the way towards the channel, and that would be a no, right? We'll open the Parkway as soon as we're clear of it. We'll get it open and get the rest of the trails and sidewalks and the flat work open as quickly as we can. And regarding the gantries back and forth, we'll have to dismantle them in some capacity and move them back. Jeremy, they'll probably have to get cut out of there in some capacity. And LMJB will have to reposition those if we can't get those out of the way, prior to that. The system all needs to progress to the east or the north, depending on how you look at it, and it's absolutely necessary for us to construct that tunnel. So we can't not use it. So it'll have to get moved or doubled up.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I just wanted to note, and this will be available online too, so people can kind of toggle back and forth between these graphics. But this graphic was kind of an attempt to show people kind of, yes, as Jim mentioned, kind of we only show the cell, which is labeled cell 8 here. Of course, tunnel construction is progressing past that. That's not shown in this graphic, but at this point, as soon as we get kind of moving down this way, this is what we kind of anticipate, that cell that's marked labeled 8 will still be in construction, but that will be clear and able to restore and open the Parkway. Got about a little more than 5 minutes left, so we'll run through a few more questions here. There are a few folks talking about extended hours, and certainly that'll continue to be a conversation, I'm sure, amongst the community. Cement trucks waiting in queue today on St. Paul, a little bit off topic. We thought they only got permission to line up on Depot. I I know we're always trying to kind of keep an eye on activity in that area. Jim, Andy, I don't know. I know that it's a busy place, and we've got a lot of traffic there that wants to get their, deliver their payload and get out of there as fast as they can. That's what I'm under the impression, and sometimes those trucks kind of stack up.
Yeah, David, this is Andy again. I'll go ahead and jump in. I think those loads are timed, and we've been working with LMJV, and we'll continue to work with LMJV to batch that concrete appropriately to minimize queuing wherever we can. Specifically, on St. Paul versus Depot. Certainly, we can discuss minimizing that with the contractor in an effort to address that issue. But we're dealing with some drivers. We're dealing with the constraints of actually getting the concrete batched and to the point of placement. And there are some other considerations to be made there, but we'll certainly continue to do our best to minimize where we can.
Just a comment too about backup alarms, that there were some lower frequency alarms, and I think Jim and Andy feel like that's a per truck thing. Some trucks have different types of backup alarms that are all they're compliant, but they have different types that are compliant. Is that correct, or am I missing that?
No, you're correct, David. There are some that have sort of the beeping, and some that have more of a growl type noise as they're backing up, and they're both compliant. Yeah.
Yep. Just a quick comment that I'll do, and then I wanted to hit on one thing before we end here, but just a comment that adding other neighborhoods other than Sidney and Kenwood, like Bryn Mawr, to the conversation about Cedar Lake Parkway, as it kind of does still affect multiple neighborhoods. We'll certainly, as we can, as we are able, as we see the work progress, certainly reach out to the neighborhoods, all the neighborhoods that are around here, if we can, as that conversation progresses regarding extended hours work. Wanted to touch on this question from regarding the park board and its signing off on the closure. Jim.
I think there's an item at the park board tomorrow, Wednesday, for a permit request that we have brought forward to the park board. So they haven't signed off yet, but we're hoping to get that permit from them.
All right, just a few minutes left. Got another comment about backup alarms, kind of using different types like white noise compared with kind of the regular ones. Andy, from my understanding, this is something that the contractor kind of has purview on in terms of the use of backup alarms, correct?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement, David.
Yeah.
We can certainly take that feedback back to the contractor and see if they have any thoughts on it.
Right. And we will do that. Any other questions, folks? We got time for one more. Anyone on the phone that I know we've kind of been running through a lot of stuff in the chat. Any comments from folks on the phone?
Well, this is Trent Wade from Seco whatnot.
Sure.
And I just want to make one comment. Like I said, I know you guys generally do a pretty good job of it, but just please keep us apprised of any setbacks or issues you run into. This is going to affect, especially with the construction that's going to be happening on Excelsior. This closure is going to really kind of restrict access to and from our homes, and so just keeping us apprised of anything would really helps us kind of plan ahead, and even for stuff such as if we have parties or get-togethers and whatnot, telling people what's the best route and stuff like that, it'd really be helpful to us.
Thanks, Trent. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean that's what we're here to do. Is help you plan as best we can, help others plan, certainly we'll continue to do that. I think Jim mentioned, maybe the video mentioned as well, we will continue to be rolling out this information for folks who are adjacent to the corridor. You'll see the flyers that you've seen for other closures or other major activities. We're going to keep pumping out information on this, including when we're getting ready to shift, from one pedestrian detour phase to the other. At every step along the way, we'll try to keep everybody as best apprised of the situation so they can plan accordingly. 7 o'clock. So I think we'll wrap it up. Certainly, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We put the Southwest LRT general email account on there. I think a lot of folks on this email have my information, david.davies@metrotransit.org. Please feel free to reach out with any other additional questions. The video will be posted in the same location as the meeting link. Both this video of the meeting and the video that we watched earlier. So all of these resources will be posted in addition to the PowerPoint, so that you can share that around with folks. Thank you again for all of your time. We're very appreciative of it, and we will talk to or see you soon. Have a good night, everybody.